Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sabrina and I'm back with another Excel tutorial for you. Now in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how you can add line graphs in Excel, which can be very useful for identifying trends and forecasting your data. Okay, now if you look at my spreadsheet here, you can see I've got a table of data, okay, which displays the revenue for 2021, okay, for each month. And it also displays the revenue for 2022 for each month. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to convert this data into a line graph, but I only want to display the revenue for 2021 in the line graph. Okay. So what you would do is firstly, you would select the data that you want to transfer into the line graph. So I'm just going to select my data here. Okay, so note here that I'm only selecting the months and the revenue for 2021, okay, because that's the only data that I want to put on my line chart. Okay, you would then go up to the Insert tab, and then you want to go down to the Charts group, okay, and then you want to find the line graph option, which is the second one down on the first column. Okay, so if you hover your mouse over that icon, it tells you that this command is for inserting a line or an area chart. And then it also tells you that this chart type will show trends over time. Okay, so if you click on the drop down on the right of that, you do see quite a few options here, such as a 2D line graph, a 3D line graph, okay? You can also do a 2D and a 3D area chart as well. But in this video, we're going to be looking at a 2D line chart, all right? So if you hover your mouse over the first example, for example, you'll see that a preview will be displayed on your spreadsheet, which will show you how your data will look like in that particular example. Okay, so I'm just going to go for this one. So if you click on that image, this will instantly transfer your data into the line graph and place it into your spreadsheet. And then you can just, click and hold and then drag that line chart and place it in your spreadsheet, in a particular area in your spreadsheet. You could also hover your mouse over one of the corners of that chart, okay, until you see a double white arrow. And then you can click and hold your mouse, drag it to resize the chart. Okay, so you can make it bigger, or if you wanted to, you can make it smaller as well. So I'm just going to make that a little bit more bigger, okay, just for our demonstration. Okay, so it's really as easy as that. So there you go. There's my line graph plotted for revenue 2021. So you can see here that I've got a title at the top. I have my axes. Okay, so the vertical axis displays the revenue, and then the horizontal axis displays the months of the year. And then this blue line is my line graph. Okay. So yeah, there you go. It's all done. Now you can edit this chart and change some of the chart elements, which is what I'm going to go through now. And I'll also show you how you can change the chart, the chart style, the color, and also how you can filter your data in that particular chart. Okay, so let's first have a look at the chart design and the style, and how you can change that. So what you can do is you can either go up to the chart design tab and just work through the chart styles and hover your mouse over each one to see which one you prefer. Okay, so as you can see that when you start hovering your mouse over the different chart designs, you'll see a preview of it in your graph. Okay, and then you can literally go for the one that you prefer. So you've got quite a lot of options there with different background colors as well. Okay, so this one here, for example, is displaying the values for each month on the line chart. Okay, so you can go for an option that you prefer. Alternatively, what you could do is when you click on the chart area on the right hand side, you'll see like a paintbrush. Okay, so if you click on that, this will display the same chart styles, okay, on the left hand side. So you can then just hover your mouse over each style and choose the one that you prefer. Okay. All right, so that one, the first tab there is for style. The second tab is for color. Okay, so you can actually customize the color as well. So you can go for a different combination of colors. Okay, so as you can see, when I've hovered my mouse over the third choice, it's changed the color of the line of the line chart. So it's now an orange color. When you go down again, it turns it into a green line. Okay, so you can change the color of the line as per your preference. So we'll just go for green. Okay. So that's how you change just the chart style and the chart color. All right. Okay. Now we do have quite a few chart elements that we can play around. So the first one we're going to start off with is the title at the top. Okay. Now, if you go towards the right, you'll see that just above the paintbrush, there is a green cross. And if you click on the green cross, it will give you a list of all of the chart elements. Okay. So we'll work through each of these chart elements. We won't look at all of them. We'll have a look at a few of them. Now, the first one displayed there is axes. Okay, so axes is basically you have two axes. You have a vertical axis and you have a horizontal axis. Okay, which basically helps you read your data. So you can see that on the vertical axis, okay, you have the values for the revenue, which will help you read your data for each month. Okay, and of course, your plotted line graph. And if you look at your horizontal axes, okay, your horizontal axis represents the months. Okay, so that's what the axes are. And if you untick the axes, what you'll see is that both of those axes they disappear. Okay, so now because you don't have the axes there, it's very hard to read this chart because you don't know. You know, without the axes, you won't really know what this line chart is trying to show you. Okay, but as soon as you add the axes in, so if I tick back into the axes checkbox, you can see now that okay, on the left hand side we have currency. Okay, so it's showing us the value for each of the months. Okay, so based on the horizontal axes, I can see that the months are displayed. So that's why axes are very useful to have. Okay, you can also add axes titles. So if you tick that, this will just literally add a text box at the bottom of the horizontal axes and then on the left of the vertical axes. So you can give your axes titles as well. So for example, for our horizontal one, we know our horizontal axis is displaying the months. So you can literally just call that months. Okay, that's it. So you can give your axes titles. So this one would be months. The vertical axis, the title for that would be revenue. Let's just spell that correctly. Okay, revenue. So there you go. So now you know what each axis is displaying. Okay. All right, so let's just click back on the green cross again. So that's axes titles. The third option there is chart title. So that's right at the top there, okay, where it says revenue 2021. Now what you'll notice is that this chart title is linked with this cell here, which is B1. Okay, so it's basically linking with the heading of your data. Now you can keep it like it is if you want. That title will be linked to that cell, which basically means that if you change the heading of that cell, your chart title will also change. So if I change that to say, if I changed that around and called it 2021 revenue, for example, and then clicked into a white cell to save it, you'll see that it will also change your chart title. All right. So you can leave it as it is if you want, or if you wanted to, you could customize that, okay, and just change it manually. So you could just double click into the chart title element. I'll just cross that box there. And then you would just highlight your text. You would change the chart title as per your preference. So for example, I'm just going to call this revenue for 2021. Okay, so you can see I've just added an extra word there and changed the words around. So you can do that. You can customize it. You can highlight the text. You can go up to the Home tab as well and format the font. So if you go to the font group, you can, make the font bold. You could underline the text. You could change the font style. You could increase the font size. So say, for example, I wanted to make that a little bit bigger. I could do that. I could change the font color. Okay, so you could do all the font formatting that you want. Okay, so that's the chart title. Now going back to the green cross again. The next one down the line is data labels, which is currently unticked. But if you tick data labels, all that does is it basically places the values, okay, above each of the plotted or each of the plots, okay, on that line, right? For basically for each month. So for each month, it will display the data or the value on your line graph, okay? Now, if you're using data labels and you've plotted the values on the chart area, then you don't really need your vertical axes to read your data anymore, okay? So you can actually, what you can do is if you've decided to keep the data labels, you can just remove the vertical axes, but leave your horizontal axes. So to do that, what you would do is you would go to the chart elements, you would hover your mouse over axes, click on the arrow on the right-hand side, and then you'll see your two axes there. Okay, so you want to untick primary vertical. And as you can see, what that will do is it will just remove your vertical axes, okay? Now, you'll notice that it's not removed my axis title. That's because I did not untick it. So if you click back on the green cross, go to axis titles, click on the arrow on the right of axis titles, okay? And again, choose the right axis to remove the title from. So again, it's primary vertical. So you would untick primary vertical, and that will remove the title for your vertical axis. All right. The next one on the line is data table. Now, if I tick data table, you'll see what it does. It literally just puts a table at the bottom of your line chart and puts the values in that table, okay, for each of the month. That's all it does. All right. So you can either have it in a table form. You could have the values plotted in a table form, or you could just have them plotted as data labels, okay, on the chart area. So it's up to you. I'm going to leave the data labels in there, so I'm just going to untick data table for now. All right. Grid lines. Okay, so grid lines are basically these gray lines that you see on the chart area, which is useful to have when you're trying to read the data on your chart, okay, using the axes on the left. But in this case, in my scenario there, as you can see, I've already got my data labels displayed, right? So I can already see, you know, the values for each month. I don't really need to read it from the axes anymore. So, you know, I could remove these grid lines. So if you untick grid lines, what you'll see is that the lines have been removed and I've now got a white background in my chart area, which looks rather good. Okay, so that's grid lines. The next one down on chart element is the legend. Okay, now currently legend is unticked, and that's actually because I only have one data being displayed on this chart, which is the revenue for 2021. So I only have one line, okay? So you don't really need a legend to tell you that this line is for 2021 revenue. However, if you had, you know, 2 or more types of data being compared on this line chart, so you say you had 3 or 4 lines on this line chart, then a legend would be useful because you would want to know what each line represents, right? So that's why, you know, that the legend by default has been unticked and removed from the chart. We then have the trend line in chart elements, which is quite interesting. So if you tick trend line, okay, you'll see that it will plot a dotted line on your chart. Now, the trend line will help you to visualize the general trend in your data. Okay, so that trend line can either be a straight or a curved line, which will basically show you the general pattern or the overall direction that your data is going in. Okay, so this dotted line here is showing that, you know, the trend for this particular data is slowly increasing. Okay, so it's going in the right direction. Okay, so that's it for chart elements. Now, on the right-hand side, you also have an option for a filter, chart filters. Okay, so the chart filters basically will allow you to edit the data points and the names that are visible on your chart. So if you click on the chart filters, okay, you can then, you know, select a particular month, for example. So if you only wanted to see specific, you know, parts of that data, you could select by the categories. So you can see in the categories, okay, all the months are displayed there. So say in this case, I only wanted to see the first half of the year, right? So from January to June. So what you can do there is you can just untick them all right, and then just select January, February, March, April, May, and June. Okay, so I've selected the first 6 months, and then of course you just want to make sure you click apply, and there you go. Okay, so this data or this chart is now showing me data for the first 6 months of 2021. All right, so you can see that it increased, the revenue increased, went down for, you know, the next 2 months, increased again, and then showed a steady increase for the final 6 month. Okay, so you can use the filter option to search for specific, or to, you know, to look at specific data. So I'm just going to select all and then reapply that to take it back to its original view. Okay, so that's the filters for you. Now, there was one other thing that I wanted to show you for the line chart, which was how to change the scale of your axes. Okay, so say for example, you know, I had the vertical axis here, so I'm just going to make a few changes. So I'm just going to go back up to the green cross to the chart elements, and I'm going to untick the data labels, right? And I'm going to tick the vertical axis option back in there. Okay, so I'm just going to tick that option there. Okay, so if you look at my chart now, you can see I've got my vertical axes, okay, and my data labels are no longer there. So I'm going to use my axes to read my data. Now, what you can do is you can actually change the scale of your axes, where you can simply input the values into the minimum and the maximum boxes, which will in effect change the top and the bottom values of your vertical axes. So at the moment, if you look at my the top and the bottom vertical axes, the bottom starts from 0, yeah, and goes all the way up to $18,000, right? Now you can change the minimum and the maximum values. Okay, now to do that, what you would do, select the axes, the vertical axes. Okay, so you can just click on any of the value in the vertical axis. You would then right click and then go all the way down to format axes. Okay, so the format axes box will appear on the right hand side for you. Okay, so you'll see here that under axes options, you have a minimum and a maximum value. Okay, so already the minimum is set to 0, which is correct. Okay, the minimum is $0, and then the maximum is 18,000. Okay, so that's the maximum value. So you can change that if you want. So if you wanted the minimum to start at say 1, okay, or 1,000, you could do that. Okay, so you'll see there that when I change the minimum value, okay, to $1,000, it's also changed the minimum value on my axis, my vertical axis, to start from $1,000. All right, so you can actually change the minimum and the maximum values on your vertical axis. Okay, so if we close this box, this format box on the right, another thing that you can do is if you just click into the white chart area here. Now, if you remember, we removed the grid lines from this chart. Okay, so to add them, you can just go back to the green cross again and then click on the grid lines option there, and that will add your grid lines back into your chart area. So you can then use these grid lines to read your values for each month. You can also add minor grid lines, okay, which is basically more lines in between to help you read your data. So to do that, what you would do is if you just hover your mouse over grid lines under chart elements and then click on the arrow on the right of grid lines, okay, you'll see there's options for adding minor grid lines as well. Okay, so you can actually go for minor horizontal lines or minor vertical lines. Okay, so we want horizontal. So if you click on the horizontal, minor horizontal tick box, okay, and then if you just go back to the chart, you can see there it's now added minor horizontal grid lines for you onto your chart area, which will help you read your data easily. Okay, so that was it for this video. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please do like and share the video so that it can reach out to more people. And do consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on any new updates. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.